Hi boys and girls, how are you all? I hope that you're staying busy at home, having a good week at home, reading, doing some of those things that we have for you in Schoology so we can continue our learning from home. Mrs. Deanne read some great stories to us the past couple days, and today is my turn. Before we went on this break, we were talking about fairy tales. So we read a couple fairy tales and then we discussed some things that most fairy tales have in common. So just to remind you, some of those things we talked about were that most fairy tales have magic of some sort. There's usually talking animals and a problem that the main character has to go through to find a solution, and usually princesses or princes and dragons and really crazy, unrealistic things that wouldn't happen in real life. So we're going to stick with that fairy tale theme today and read a fairy tale that you probably have all heard of before at some point. But first we want to thank Scholastic for giving us permission to read their books. They gave teachers permission to record themselves reading their books, which we are so thankful for because this allows us to stay connected with you all and read some great books. So today we are reading Red Riding Hood, which is told and illustrated by James Marshall. A long time ago, in a simple cottage beside the deep, dark woods, there lived a pretty child called Red Riding Hood. She was kind and considerate, and everybody loved her. One afternoon, Red Riding Hood's mother called to her. "Granny isn't feeling up to stuff today," she said, "so I've baked her favorite custard as a little surprise. Be a good girl and take it to her, will you?" Red Riding Hood was delighted. She loved going to Granny's, even though it meant crossing the deep, dark woods. When the custard had cooled, Red Riding Hood's mother wrapped it up and put it in a basket. "Now whatever you do," she said, "go straight to Granny's. Do not tarry. Do not speak to any strangers." "Yes, Mama," said Red Riding Hood. Before long, she was in the deepest part of the woods. "Ooh," she said, "this is scary." Suddenly, a large wolf appeared. "Good afternoon, my dear," he said. "Care to stop for a little chat?" "Oh, gracious me," said Red Riding Hood. "Mama said not to speak to any strangers." But the wolf had such charming manners. "And where are you going, sweet thing?" he said. "I'm on my way to visit Granny, who lives in the prettiest yellow house on the other side of the woods," said Red Riding Hood. "She's feeling poorly, and I'm taking her a surprise." "You don't say," said the wolf. Just then he had a delightful idea. "No reason why I can't eat them both," he thought. "Allow me to escort you," he said. "You never know what might be lurking about." "You're too kind," said Red Riding Hood. Beyond the forest, they came to a patch of sunflowers. "Why not pick a few?" suggested the wolf. "Granny loves flowers, you know." But while Red Riding Hood was picking a pretty bouquet, the clever wolf hurried on ahead to Granny's house. "Who is it?" called out Granny. It is I, your delicious, darling granddaughter," said the wolf in a high voice. "The door is unlocked," said Granny. "Surprise!" called the wolf. Granny was furious at having her reading interrupted. "Get out of here, you horrid thing," she cried. but the wolf gobbled her right up. He didn't even bother to chew. "Tasty," he said, patting his belly. "So tasty." Just then he heard footsteps on the garden path. "Here comes dessert." And losing no time, he put on Granny's cap and glasses, jumped into bed, and pulled up the covers. "Who is it?" he called out in his sweetest Granny voice. "It is I, your little granddaughter," said Red Riding Hood. "The door is unlocked," said the wolf. Red Riding Hood was distressed at seeing her grandmother so changed. "Why, Granny," she said, "what big eyes you have." "The better to see you, my dear," said the wolf. "And Granny, what long arms you have." "The better to hug you, my dear," said the wolf. "And Granny, what big teeth you have." "The better to eat you, my dear," cried the wolf. Uh-oh. And he gobbled her right up. "I'm so wicked," he said, "so wicked." But really, he was enormously pleased with himself, and having enjoyed such a heavy meal, he was soon snoring away. A hunter passed by. He was alarmed by a frightening racket. "That doesn't sound like Granny," he said. And so the brave hunter jumped in the window. He killed the sleeping wolf. Out jumped Granny and Red Riding Hood. "We are so grateful," said Red Riding Hood. "That wicked wolf won't trouble you again," said the hunter. "It was so dark in there I couldn't read a word," said Granny. Red Riding Hood promised never, ever to speak to another stranger, charming manners or not. And she never did. Okay, so that was our story for the day. Oh, and there's the wolf on the back. So our story for the day, our fairy tale, which definitely had talking animals, like the talking wolf, and great characters in there. So one thing that I am going to challenge you to do, so we can continue to learn and keep talking about aspects of books. So we were comparing and contrasting before this book. Comparing and contrasting, which I wish I could ask you all to give me the answer, because I know you would, but since you're not here to tell me, comparing and contrasting is talking about comparing two things and seeing how they are alike and how they are different. So I would like you to compare and contrast two characters in this book. So it's up to you if you would like to compare and contrast Red Riding Hood and the wolf, or if you'd like to compare and contrast Red Riding Hood and Granny, or the wolf and Granny, or the hunter and one of the other characters. So just talk about how they are alike, things that are different, and if you would like to take a picture of that and send it to me on Dojo, I would love to see how you guys are doing work from home. But obviously this is just a suggested activity, but Mrs. White would love to see it. So alright, boys and girls, keep reading. We want to get our minutes in, do those things on Schoology, and have a good rest of your day. I'll see you all soon.